Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Gals podcast. Sharon Vornholt is your host and the creator of the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog, where you will learn how to become a savvy real estate investor, make money, build streams of passive income, and create a lifestyle and a business you love. Whether you're a seasoned real estate investor or just getting started, this show is for you. Now, let's talk real estate investing.
This is Sharon Vornholt of the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog, here today for another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. My guest today is Rachel Hernandez. She's better known as the Mobile Home Girl. Not only is she an active real estate investor, but she's the author of a book called Adventures in Mobile Homes, which is a great book on working in this niche. If you want to learn how to get started investing in mobile homes, her book is a great resource. Now, one thing I really love about Rachel's story is exactly how she ended up in the niche of mobile homes. Rachel was like a lot of us when she started out. She tried a couple of different strategies before she found the one that was right for her. She had originally, she had a vision of what she thought she wanted her business to look like, and that was a large portfolio of single-family homes. And while she was certainly successful at this, it just didn't provide her with the lifestyle she wanted. I'm anxious for all of you to hear Rachel's story. Good morning, Rachel.
Good morning, Sharon.
I'm so happy to have you here today, and I'd like to start off by having you tell folks all about how you got started in real estate investing, and tell them your story about how you ended up investing in mobile homes.
Okay, sure. Good question, Sharon. Well, as far as real estate goes, I'm not going to lie, and I know it's cliche, but I was inspired by the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you, I give props to that book because it changed my life. Just learning about, the concept of passive income, it changed the way I viewed everything. And I know a lot of people, they kind of glance over, Kiyosaki's book today, but it was really a game changer for me. For me, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've had entrepreneurial ventures, but I really never had the support. I mean, I was raised like Kiyosaki by a family of professionals, and the expectation was for me to go to school, get a job, make a lot of money, go to school again, and make more money. So there was really no talk about entrepreneurship. And all I learned was in order to make money, I had to work for it. So just, Sharon, learning about that concept of passive income was so new and interesting. And once I heard that, that was it. I made my plan to just get into real estate investing. So starting out, I started out on the low end of the totem pole. I started out as a bird dog, just looking for deals for other investors. And then from there, I became a wholesaler, and I started wholesaling deals to other investors just to build up cash. That was my plan, just to build up cash so that I can eventually buy, rental properties to create passive income. Mm-hmm. So once I built up the cash, I started buying rental properties, and I became a landlord. But it really wasn't what I had actually expected. There were a lot of late phone calls at night, a lot of complaints, people wanting me to fix this and fix that, and I just didn't have time to do anything. I found myself always working. My phone was glued to my ear. So after managing my properties for a little while, I hired some property managers because I thought, well, then they can manage them for me. But even then, I still had to manage the managers. So even though I received that stream of income from the rent payments and had the managers working for me, what I lacked was time to do the things I wanted to do, Yeah. I really didn't have a life, so I quickly understood the concept and importance of financial freedom.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what I did, I had the rental properties. I was at a point where I was going through evictions. I was going through move-ins and move-outs, and I just had to think about, this just was not the life I wanted to lead. So I decided to cash out on my entire portfolio, and I went back and I started reading Lonnie Scrugg's book, Deals on Wheels, years after I had read it, because I read it when I first started wholesaling, and then I got interested in mobile home investing.
Yeah, I think that is such an interesting story, and you and I feel about the same way about landlording. It just was miserable for me, and even I've heard a lot of people say that even with managers, you have to manage the managers, unless you can find some exceptional managers, I might say that.
Right.
It's curious, though, that you talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I tell people that book changed my life, too, because if you really soak in the concepts of that book, it truly can be life-changing. I came from a family that was both, my dad was an entrepreneur and my mom had a job, so I saw both sides of the fence, and I had to get kind of past the idea that all entrepreneurs don't struggle, because there's certainly a lot of that in the early years, but you get your mindset, so much of your mindset from your family. I just find that crazy that it sticks right there for such a long time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It is. Well, I want to talk about your first deal. So you sold your rental portfolio. Then you had some cash, and so tell me about your first mobile home you bought. How did you do it, and did you pay cash for it? What did that deal look like?
Oh, wow, that brings back memories, Sharon. I feel like I've been doing this for too long. But you're getting me all nostalgic here.
That's okay.
I honestly, I didn't have a plan. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I just didn't have a plan. I knew I wanted to get into buying and holding, mobile homes, but I just didn't know how to do it. So naturally, I've got a background in corporate sales and marketing, so I just did what I did best, and that was marketing and talking with people. So the first deal I actually bought, which is, by the way, my most important deal and the deal that I've learned the most, I just found it just by passing out flyers and talking to the residents in the neighborhood of one of the parks I was approved to work with. Now, this park, I actually, like Lonnie says in his book, talk to the park managers, see if, they'll allow you to work in there. I just went in and talked to the manager and told her who I was, and the manager was, very nice and said, okay, yeah, you can work here. And I thought the manager would start sending me leads, but that wasn't really the case. I actually had to do work for myself. So I made up these flyers and just started passing them out in the park, just talking to local residents in the area. And from one of the flyers I passed out, I had a family that had actually called me. They had been living in the park for, I guess, over 10 years. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath mobile home. And they called me because they got the flyer. They were planning to move out of the area, and they just did a quick sale. So when I got the call, I took down the information and whatnot, what we've learned, and asked them how much, do you want to sell the home for? And the wife had told me, well, that's what we want to talk to you about. We kind of want to get to know you and get a feel for you before we tell you how much we want to sell the home. So at that point, I was just like, okay, are you really motivated? You're not even telling me how much you want to sell the home. And I don't know if you've heard in one of those courses, like if they don't tell you all the information, then they're not motivated, and go on to the next lead,
Yeah.
But I was at the point where, well, they made the effort to call me. I've got no other leads here, so let's just make the appointment. So I just made the appointment. I had a bunch of questions, written out beforehand on a notebook, but once I got there, everything went out the door.
Uh-huh. Yeah, as it often does.
Yeah, so I just kind of went through the house and looked it over. It looked like it was in pretty good condition, just some cosmetic issues. And we sat down and, we talked about, how much they wanted the home for. And I found out at that meeting they were asking $5,000 at least for the home.
Mm-hmm.
So we did a bit of negotiating and a little bit of back and forth. But we were able to come up with an agreed amount. I bought that home for $3,600.
Wow.
And $3,600, and I was able to sell that home in 2 weeks. I sold it for $10,000. I collected a $1,000 move-in fee, and I received $250 per month for 4.5 years. So that was my first deal.
Wow. So you got $1,000 down, and then $250 for 4 years.
4.5 years. Yeah.
That was 4.5 years. Okay. So yeah, there is a big advantage for someone who would want to work in mobile homes is that you can get that paid off very quickly. They can, you can then you can have all your cash back in a relatively short period of time.
I know. It's so funny. I've been doing this too much. Every time I buy a deal, I don't even know what the return is. But I just it's good enough.
It's good enough. Yeah. So you mentioned.
What are the returns? What are the returns?
Yeah. Really big. Really big.
Exactly.
So you found that deal by passing out flyers in the park. Is that still the same type of marketing you do today when you're marketing directly to individual sellers?
No, I don't do that anymore. Right now it's more the park managers just because I have such a great relationship. And I see them all the time. Mm-hmm. So, I can still do that kind of marketing, but it's to the point where I know a lot of the residents in the neighborhood. So that when they see me, they know who I am. I take the time to talk with them or whatnot. And I know the park managers really well, and also the maintenance people in the parks, too. They're also my eyes and ears. Mm-hmm. So this was just kind of early beginnings while I was trying to strengthen that relationship with the park manager.
Right.
What can I do? So.
Yeah, we all do things in the beginning. We used to visit open houses to get to know realtors when I was in the home inspection business. We would go out on Sundays and go and you do what you need to do to get your name out there in the beginning. I know you probably feel the same way.
Yes, I did a lot of marketing in the beginning. A lot of marketing. I tried a lot of things, believe me.
So how do you value a mobile home? If I'm going to look up a house, if I want to value a house, I can go on the MLS. I can look on the tax assessor's site. So how do you value a mobile home?
Well, it's really different. I know in real estate, like you had mentioned, there's the MLS. Mm-hmm. And really the way I value a mobile home, I don't look at the Blue Book value at all, because it's really more for dealerships who buy and sell retail. But valuing a mobile home, it's really easy. It's the park manager. They're the gatekeeper, and they're there because the parks, some of them, the parks, they sell their own homes. Mm-hmm. And they know exactly how much people are willing to pay, how much the homes are worth, what people are looking for. So it's just a matter of getting to know the park manager and the neighborhood. Each park is different. One park could have a certain value for mobile homes, while another park, even just down the street, could have another value. Mm-hmm. So really, the park managers have been a great source of information, and I've made a good relationship with them as well, too, in terms of helping me to value the mobile homes. So
you just ask them and they tell you?
Yeah, Yeah, they tell me, they say, well, Rachel, we've got this 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 16 by 80, 1996 or 97 home, and we're selling for this much, and these are what people are willing to pay as a move-in fee, and this is what people are willing to pay per month with the lot rent, and again, it's building that trust. Once they know they trust you, then they'll start telling you some things because they want to help you and you want to help them. So it's kind of a win-win situation for both.
Well, I think it's kind of a crazy question, but why don't they sell them themselves?
The mobile home? Well, yeah, that's one of the things because they just don't want to deal. They don't want to deal. I mean, even though their job is property management and they manage the park, they just don't want to deal with the people.
Okay, so there's two very distinctly different things. There's the buying end and the managing end.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you can work in it for a job, but once you're off work, you want to do your own thing.
Right.
Imagine working in this industry, and then you're on your work time, and then you still have to deal. They just kind of want to do their own thing, and that's an interesting question, though.
Yeah. That was. I thought, well, gosh, why don't they do this? So when you we've talked about the importance of getting to know the park managers, and so you just do that through networking, through visiting the parks, and just stopping by unannounced, or do you make appointments?
No, I don't make appointments.
I didn't think you did, but you just kind of stop by.
Yeah, I mean, appointments. It's very formal, and this industry is not as formal as, say, the real estate industry, and it's more of a I do business very old-fashioned, very old world with a handshake, the way business was done before, years ago. Right. So basically, I know exactly what the best times to reach these park managers. First thing in the morning is the worst time because they're doing their thing once they get into the office. And then late in the afternoon is not a good time because there's people getting off work, make their complaints, or maybe they're late with lot rent. They need to make, payment arrangements. So I've learned to go at times where it's been slow. I usually go like right before lunch or right after lunch. Those are the best times. And at that time, it's kind of a breath of fresh air to see someone who actually wants to see them instead of someone complaining about something in the park or wanting something from them. I'm actually, the opposite. I'm giving them, my time, and they appreciate that. So
I think that is just so interesting.
We don't talk about mobile homes. We talk about other things too.
Exactly. You talk about just how are you and how are your kids or whatever. Yeah. Yes,
exactly. Because we're all people. We're not robots. And a lot of people, they go in there. And I've actually been in the office with a park manager. I'll tell you, Sharon, where an investor called and had asked the park manager, do you have any Lonnie deals?
What?
And the park manager didn't even know what a Lonnie deal was on the phone, and they had never met this person in their life.
Yeah. The mobile homes is no different than any real estate. It's a people business. It's all about those relationships.
Exactly. And I've been in the office, too, before. I actually came late, but park manager was sitting with an investor who was introducing themselves and making a little spiel. And I came in, and the park manager told me, oh, Rachel's here, blah, blah, blah. Came out to talk with him. I'm like, who's that? She's like, oh, it's a new investor. And he came in asking if I had any deals. I don't even know what he's talking about. So, I mean, honestly, if you go in there saying, give me the deals, and they don't even know who you are, why would they help you?
That's a great point.
I don't know. Yeah.
So that's a great lesson on what not to do. So let's say you are brand new and you don't have any relationships, and you I guess you could find the parks on the internet, or maybe you just know where some of them are. Tell somebody that's just getting started, how would you go about doing those introductions the right way?
Well, basically, you've got to go in there being sincere. I know it sounds hokey, but you really have to have a sincere interest in the park manager, not only the park manager, Sharon, but the park itself.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going in there thinking about your own goals and needs and wants and how I want to buy a home and get cash flow, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to go in there like you have a sincere interest in learning more about the park as well as the park manager.
Mm-hmm.
So most times I just go in there, myself, and I say, oh, hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm just passing by and noticed the park and just came to get more information. And I stop. And then they start talking. And they start talking, then we kind of get a back and forth, and it just spills from there.
Mm-hmm.
Most people, what they do is they come in, they have the whole sales pitch. They say, well, I'm an investor, and I do this, and I do that, and it's all about I.
Mm-hmm.
And, while the park manager's hearing I, why in the world would I help this person if all this person is talking about is themselves?
Exactly.
So, really, it has to be directed at the park and the park manager, the interest there. So, it's really easy, the concept, but it's just putting it into play. I can understand why people have difficulty with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're a very people-oriented person. That's easy to see. So I think it is hard for some people. But, I always tell people with real estate, it really works for anything, is start a conversation. Don't do what you said. Don't go in and give them your spiel. Just start a conversation and kind of let it see where it goes, actually.
Exactly. We're all human beings.
Yeah, true. So with any type of real estate, there are always areas that are more desirable than others. So I would assume that there are levels of mobile home parks. So how do you figure all of this out? Is it by the general surrounding area, or what is the criteria for deciding this is a good park or this is a not so good park?
Well, to be honest, Sharon, I'll tell you what I did when I first started out. Really don't know what's a good park and what's not a good park until I started going out to see the parks and had something to compare to. I could go to a nice park, or I can go to a park and not know the level until I can compare it to another park. So when I first started out, I actually went to all the parks in my area, which was over 200.
Oh, my word.
And, yeah, it was a lot of, I think I told you this. It took me almost a year to find my first deal. So, I think it was 8 months. At the 8-month mark, that's when I found my first deal. It does take work. But I went to all those parks, and once I started going to the parks and talking to the park managers, forming relationships, I soon found out what were nice parks, what were not so nice parks, what were middle-of-the-road parks. And what I learned was the nicer parks, all the homes were uniform. So basically there were no fences. A lot of nice parks, they don't allow fences in the yards because everyone can have a different fence. So that would not make it uniform. And a lot of the nice parks also don't allow large animals like dogs. They have to be small animals, small dogs, and they have to be kept inside.
Oh.
Yes. The other thing about nice parks is that all the lawns have to be, manicured. There can't be that much items on the porch, and you have to keep it at a minimum. So everything's very nicely kept in nice parks. Another thing in the nicest parks is the roads are paved. And there's professional landscaping being done to the park all the time. Now, in the not-so-nice parks, you'll have unpaved roads, maybe there'll be fences and there'll be larger dogs, and there could be dogs or animals walking around roaming the streets. There usually won't be the amenities that a nice park has in the lower end parks, such as the clubhouse and the pool, and they might have a laundry facility as well too. But the main difference I see between the nicer parks and the not so nice parks is just the sense of community. The nicer parks, they'll have a monthly neighborhood garage sale. And they'll have, Memorial Day barbecues. They'll have Halloween. They'll have Easter egg hunts for Easter. They'll have a newsletter. I mean, all kinds of things that foster community the nicer parks have, while the other ones, they do not, in my opinion. So.
That is so interesting. I guess I just never thought of it that way, that you mentioned, having the clubhouses and pools and things like that. You can see that this is not a niche that I know a whole lot about. But I get your point completely on the fences. Many neighborhoods, I guess everywhere have rules about that sort of thing. Maybe you can't have a chain link fence, or you can't have a fence so tall, or some neighborhoods you can't park an RV or a boat outside. But it gets back to that sense of community and keeping the community nice for everyone, because then when you allow this person's boat, then before you know it, somebody's got a car up on blocks in the neighborhood. So,
right.
Well, that makes,
and a lot of people, a lot of investors, they shy away from the nicer parks, and I'll tell you why, because they think it's too restrictive.
Oh.
But I know others that they deal more in the lower end parks because they get more freedom in terms of those kinds of things that the park allows them to do and not to do. But like I said before, it's it depends on your personality. So.
Right. Yeah, and well, let me ask you this: within the different levels of parks, are there some that are mostly homeowners, like any neighborhood, or are there some maybe that are better for renters? Are they segmented in those in that way?
I think for the majority of the nicer parks, they tend to cater more towards homeowner types.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, they do allow rentals, but they've got a really rigorous, screening process.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the lower end parks. And I think for the majority of the nicer parks, they cater mostly to homeowner type folks, versus the lower end parks. There could be more rentals. So there is kind of a divide between the nicer parks and the not so nice parks in terms of homeowner types, and then the rentals as well.
Oh, so. Okay. So if you purchased a home and it was in a park that you really didn't like, it was maybe a lower end park, would there be an occasion where you would move that mobile home to a different park, or is that like going to make the manager mad and you wouldn't want to do that?
No, actually I've done it on a number of occasions, but I only move homes out of parks that I just don't do business in.
Okay.
And yes, sometimes the manager is not happy about that, but as long as the lot rent is paid up and they're out of the contract, the seller, there's really no reason or cause for the home to stay in that location for the new buyer. So I've done it where I've taken homes out of parks that I don't do business in and put them into parks that I do business in. Another reason why the park managers really want to work with me. But I don't take homes out of parks that I do business in. That's for sure. That would be bad business, Sharon. That would
be bad business. Yeah, I can see that. Well, that kind of brought me to another question that I didn't even know that I had. So.
Okay.
With mobile homes, you've got the mobile home piece that you're going to buy or rent or whatever that piece is. But how does it work with the lot? Is it like a 1-year contract, or how does that part of it work?
Yeah, most times it's just like an apartment. So a lot of these parks, They do have a yearly contract. It's usually 1 year.
Okay.
And then after the end of the contract, it's just basically on a renewal basis, because the lot rent does tend to go up, not by much, every year or every couple of years. And it's just kind of, it's just a formal paperwork for some of these nicer parks. Now, there are some parks that they'll try to get folks into, I've heard, like 5-year contracts and 6 or 7-year contracts. It's really not an issue for me if that ever comes up, because I keep the home there anyway in parks that I do business with. So it's not an issue. And then there are other parks, I see more the lower end parks, they do on a month to month. So it really depends on the park and how they handle their paperwork. But yeah, usually there tends to be a contract.
Okay, so what would be a typical lot rent, like a range?
Right. Well, I've heard lot rent for, I think this is somewhere in the South, as low as $150 a month, up to $1,000 a month. And I think that figure is in California.
I was going to say, that's high.
Yes. But usually the lot rents that I tend to deal with, it's in the middle. It's about $500-600 a month for the lot rents. And these are in the nicer high-end parks.
Okay. So they could conceivably be paying as much as like a single-family rental home by the time they have their mobile home paid for, or if they're paying for it, they could be up to $700-800 a month. Kind of comparable to a type of home.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, that's just very interesting. So, is there a type of mobile home that's better for investors to invest in? Like in single-family homes, people like 3-bedroom homes. Is it the same in mobile homes?
You know, I hesitate to give a criteria because it's funny because I'm not, you know me, Sharon, I'm not a black and white person.
I know.
When I give advice. And it really, I have to say, it always caters to what works for the individual, because I hear folks saying, you need to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single wide, with central heat and air conditioning, and that's all you need to buy. So they pass out on all these other opportunities. Whereas I've heard of folks who've been very successful in the 55 and over communities, only buying 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and they've been very successful. They've been doing it for years. So in terms of criteria for a home, I would say the first thing is to know what neighborhoods you want to work in. And then once you decide on what neighborhood you want to work in and create that relationship with the parks that you want to work in, see what the demand is in that park.
Okay, that's a great point.
Because you might be surprised. It may not just be 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You know, it could be 1-bedroom, 1-bath. I don't know what the demand could be in that neighborhood. And then cater it to the neighborhood that you're working in. And that's just my opinion.
Well, no, that makes perfect sense, because we have neighborhoods here that are higher end neighborhoods, but they're older homes and they're smaller, choppier homes, and a lot of them have 1 bath. But because of the area they're in, boy, they just sell like hotcakes for top dollar. And you would never expect it to be that way.
Exactly. And my first deal, Sharon, it was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And that I sold that in 2 weeks. So
wow.
Had I listened to the advice of others, just go for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I could have passed up on that deal.
You could have, and
changed
you know,
history.
Your history. You wouldn't be here maybe today if you'd done that. Who knows?
Exactly.
You know, and there are different. I think too, the neighborhood, like you said, makes a difference. 2-bedroom homes in general are harder to rent or sell, but not in certain neighborhoods in my city. There are certain neighborhoods where it's kind of the norm due to the age of the house. So if you're buying what is considered to be an average 2-bedroom home in that area, then it wouldn't necessarily be a downside for a person looking in that area. Once again, it's all about the whole big picture.
Right, exactly. And finding out what works for the individual. I always say that, but everyone wants the criteria.
Yeah, but that's true. Now, Rachel, when you buy a mobile home with the intention of fixing it up and reselling it to a homeowner, how do you find your buyers? How do you market for a buyer?
Well, usually it's, again, through the park manager. Since I'm dealing with higher-end parks, usually there are folks wanting to live in these parks, and usually the park manager has a waiting list.
Oh, okay.
But they have a waiting list of folks wanting to, and some have actually taken the time and done an application, and they're just waiting for a home to come up. But apart from the park manager, I just, like I did my first deal, I actually do go out for when I have buyers. I mean, when I'm marketing for buyers, and I go in the local neighborhood and I do pass out flyers for homes that I'm having on the market. So I still do that even today. So.
Yeah, I would think that would be a great marketing strategy because people often know someone that wants to live where they live.
Right. And in the beginning, I did like I said, I did so many different marketing strategies. I mean, I put flyers up at the laundromat, at the businesses, local businesses, the gas stations. I even went to the dealerships and did sales presentations for their sales staff. And after doing all this marketing, it still all goes down to just, having that strong relationship with the park manager.
With the park manager.
All that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that is just, if people get one takeaway today, that's probably it. Build that relationship with the park manager, and in time, the rest will fall into place.
Yes, and I hate to sound like a broken record, Sharon, but that's just kind of what's worked for me.
No, well, I can totally understand that. Absolutely. So I'm curious about the closing. I've done, tons and tons and tons of closings on residential real estate. They're all the same. In Kentucky, we close with an attorney. So we go to the attorney's office, and it takes, 20, 30 minutes to do a double closing, which is what I do most of the time. I buy and sell all in one fell swoop. But when you purchase a mobile home, I know that's a little bit different. So tell me how you do that.
Well, as far as the closing goes, just like residential real estate, we meet at the home on the day of closing, and I do a final walkthrough of the home, make sure everything is the way I want it to be and what we agreed on in the sales contract. But once I go through the walkthrough of the home, we basically, go to the housing office, local housing office, do the paperwork there on the spot. They even notarize documents for me now. And once we get the paperwork in, the housing office is, okay, you're good to go. They give me the keys. I give them the check, and that's that. So
now, what is
the
housing office? Yeah, what is the housing office?
The local housing office is the entity, and it's different for, depending on the area, that they basically are in charge of doing the titling for manufactured homes as personal property, though. Personal property.
Okay.
Residential real estate, mobile home attached to land, that's going to the courthouse usually.
Okay. So in a sense, it's kind of like going to your county clerk's office and transferring a car, but it's for mobile homes.
Yes, and actually it's funny that you mentioned that. In some locales, it's actually the DMV that does that for manufacturing.
Oh, okay. So, that's interesting to know. That's way simpler.
Exactly. And one thing I like about it, too, is that it's just so fast and so easy, and you don't have all these third parties involved,
Messing up your deal.
You know what I learned early on in my career, Sharon, that the more people involved in the deal, the longer it's going to take. And it's so true.
That is so true. And the better chance that something's going to blow up in your face.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, I wanted to ask you about who should be on your team when you're a mobile home investor? Is it the same people kind of that should be on your team if you're in apartments or single family homes?
Yeah, it's actually a little bit different than apartments and single family homes. I have done a write-up on it, but there's a list of team members that I do have on my team. The first one is, I hate to say it again, but it's the park managers of the parks you want to work in. You definitely want to have them on your team. If they're not on your team, then it's going to be an issue.
Yes.
But apart from the park managers, you want to have a good relationship with an insurance agent. And I know that this is probably something people are asking, insurance agent? What are you talking about? Because the insurance agent will get you the quote in time for closing. You know, this goes back to the closing. Right. And they bind coverage for me on the day of closing. So I want to have insurance on the home on the day of closing. And if you've got an insurance agent that is really hard to get a hold of, or they've got too much work and they're not doing your work, and then you may not have insurance on that home on the day of closing. Because if there's a tornado, something happens, there's a fire, and then you've already got title to the home, you want to make sure you've got insurance on that. So definitely have a good insurance agent on your team. And I've had a really great insurance agent, gets back to me right away, and just a good relationship, just good person to have on my team. But apart from the insurance agent and the park manager, depending on how much work someone wants to do, at the very least, I have a team of contractors. I have handymen that I work with, and I have more than one because they do get backed up. They get busy. I've got electricians, I've got plumbers, I've got AC guys, I've got roofers. And again, this goes back to how much work someone wants to do on the homes, if they think that they can handle it. For me, I always like to get an opinion or a couple of opinions. So I've got a good team of contractors that work for me. Apart from that, as far as marketing and sales and getting to know the industry, getting industry updates, I have a couple of relationships with some of the dealerships in the area. Like what I said, I had in the beginning, I did those marketing presentations to their sales teams and brought them donuts. And they always like that.
Yes.
But it's one of those things where if I get someone who calls me and they're looking for a home on land, I just refer them to them. And if they get someone who calls who's looking for a home in a park, or if they have a home that a seller that needs to sell their home in a park or sell their home on a piece of land, but in order to get a new home, then they'll call me. So it's kind of a back and forth with the dealership. So I have a great relationship with the dealerships. But other than that, I mean, it's not as many people. For me, I don't, Sharon, this is just how I work. I'd rather have really good relationships with a few people than mediocre relationships with a bunch of people. So
exactly.
The relationships I have are very, very, very close knit, and I know them, they know me. Instead of mediocre relationships with a bunch of people over time. So.
No, I think you are absolutely right about that. That means that you have people that you can count on.
Exactly.
So important.
And if they can't do a job, they'll tell me.
Exactly, and you need that. You need to know not next week, but you need to know today that they can't get to it for 2 or 3 weeks.
Exactly. So.
Well, I just this has been a really enjoyable interview, and I seem to remember somewhere that I'm going to ask you if you still do this. Do you still take summers off?
Summers off, it really depends on my inventory. I used to take the entire summer off, but a lot of times, I mean, now I've just been having some short vacations. But it seems like my workload, I think last year it got actually kind of large during the summer. But if I'm going to take a vacation, I'll let the park managers know. But if I have something on inventory, then I've got to take care of that before I go out of town.
I remember feeling very jealous of you a couple of years ago because I'd hear she's taking the summer off, and I'd go, what? She's doing what?
Yes,
Couldn't figure that one out.
It's
How did
nice.
she? Yeah. Well,
it's nice. It's nice. It's nice to, and I'm finally getting to that point because I've been doing this for so long now, Sharon. It feels like ages, like just discussing my first mobile home deal. That all this time that and effort that I put into the business, it's actually finally paying off. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, you deserve it. I know that you work hard in your business. And a while back, I reviewed Rachel's book. I read her book and reviewed it on my blog, Adventures in Mobile Homes, if I can spit that out just right. So I want to encourage anybody that's even got the glimmer of thought that they might invest in mobile homes to pick up Rachel's book. You can pick it up on Amazon. It's a great book on how to get started and all the ins and outs, and I would say that you can take that book and start your career just with that book. She also has a great website where she chronicles a lot of the stuff that comes up. I like to call it real life stuff, adventuresinmobilehomes.com. So be sure to stop by there, and I will put those links under this podcast. Rachel, once again, thank you so much for doing the interview today. As always, you just delivered a lot of great content.
Great. Thanks for having me, Sharon. I appreciate it.
Well, it's always great catching up, and I will let everybody know when this is going to be up on the blog, and I look forward to everybody, leave your comments and go head on over to iTunes if you would and give us a great review. We're still trying to get the reviews in. So thanks for listening. Thank you, Rachel, and I'll be back soon with another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing.